Okay, so we're in the middle of Kuf Ayin Aleph Amid Beis, 6 lines down in the wide lines. Tnan Hassam. So this is going to explain. I think we might have seen this. I'm not exactly sure because I was having a hard time figuring out how to end the sugya last time. Tnan Hassam. Shtori Chayv Hamukdamin Psulin Vahamucharim Ksherim. Stone has a star Chayv. Now we have to constantly remember what kind of star we're talking about. Over here, we're talking about a star of a loan. Reuven lent money to Shimon. If Reuven wrote a date that is earlier than the date on which the loan took place, right? They did the loan today. It was December 14th. And he says instead this was written on November 1st. It says on the star that this loan is from November 1st. It's possible for the obvious reason, right? That if Reuven is then unable to pay the loan, then Shimon can go to the Lekuchas from November 1st. And there was no real loan actually from November 1st. So we don't want to make the Shibud go earlier than the Chayiv. But if it's Mo'ocher, if it's written later, and the lender accepts it, so the lender is he's going to get a shorter period of time in which he's able to be gaiver from Lekuchas, it's going to be kosher nevertheless. And the truth of the matter is, if he has Eidim that the loan was made on December 14th, on today, even though the date on it is, let's say, February 1st, 2025, he's still going to be able to be gaiva from the date that the loan was actually extended. Doesn't make a difference what was said in the star, because a loan when a loan is extended with a star, it has a coil, and people hear about it. When a loan is made with Eidim, people hear about it and they'll be aware of the loan. Amar Rav Hamnuna, Lo shanu el shtari halva. This is only true for shtari halva, that if you could make a star ma'ucha, that it's kosher. Aval shtari mekach memka afilu muchar nami psulim. If you make a star where Reuven says, "I'm selling this karka to Shimon," and he writes the star and he gives it over to Shimon on December 14th, but the date on it says February 1st, 2025, it's going to be possible. My timer. Zimnim de mazmin le ara benisan. Well, I'm going to have to stick with the Gemara's example. Maybe he's going to sell it actually on the first day of Nisan. The cost of le betishrei, and he's going to write to him, the date on the star will be on the following Tishrei, so 6 months later. So the sale, Reuven sold his karka to Shimon on the first day of Nisan, and the star says that it's being sold on Tishrei, but Shimon already has the karka in his possession, and Reuven comes into inheritance, and he says, I never really wanted to sell this karka. I'm going to pay Shimon, and I'm going to buy it back from him. And he buys it back from him in Iyar, in between Nisan, before the date that's written and after the date that it was sold. And he buys it back. B'chimati Tishrei mapikle. Shimon's going to produce the star that says on it Tishrei. He'll say, yeah, it's true that I sold it back to you back in Iyar, but now I have a star that you sold it back to me. He's claiming that originally Shimon sold it to me, then Reuven sold it to me, then Reuven bought it back, and then I bought it back from him in Tishrei, because he has a star that says that it's being sold on Tishrei. So that's why we don't allow a star ma'ucher on karka. Why don't we have a similar problem with the shtar halva? Why did we say the shtar halva, where it's just a note of that you owe money, that you can't do a mocha? Why? Zimrin the Yazef ben Nisan. Maybe Reuven will borrow money from Shimon in Nisan. The kotzav le shtara betishrei, and the date on the star will be Tishrei, 6 months later. Umisraz mi le zuzi beini, and in between, before Tishrei, in Iyar, Reuven's going to get some money. Uparale, and he'll pay Shimon, he'll pay up the loan. Ba'amalei havli shtara. but Reuven will say, listen, I want to pay up my loan early, but I need the star. That star that says that it's that I owe you money, and that said that has a loan dated for Tishrei. Amalei Irkisli. And Shimon says, no, I'm sorry, I lost the star. The cause of Leitavra, and therefore, instead of Shimon handing over the star, he'll write him a receipt. And the Chimot is Zmane, when the time comes, meaning in Tishrei, when Tishrei arrives, Mapikle, he'll pick up, Shimon will produce the star that he claimed had been lost, and Reuven has a what do you call it, a tavra, he has a receipt, but the receipt is dated for a year. Hani hashtu the yasis mine. He'll bring up, Shimon will produce the original loan document that's dated in Tishrei, and in Tishrei he'll say, oh, Reuven just borrowed more money from me. So why don't we have that problem by halva also? So Gemara kasavar ein kaisun shayva. We hold like the machlekes we had back in the Mishnah. He holds that we don't write that we don't make a shiver when a lender says, I lost my star, and he says, I want to give a shiver. I'll write you a shiver instead of producing the star. The borrower can say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in a shiver. Listen, if the borrower accepts it, it's one thing, but he could say, I'm not interested in a shiver. I need the actual loan document, because like we said, then it removes the burden of proof onto the borrower that now he has to watch the shiver instead of the lender having the responsibility of holding on to the original loan document. This is a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. He's saying like Rabbi Yehuda that we don't write a shiver. There's a machlekes in the Mishnah. This is we'll see whether you hechlef. Rabbi Yehuda says machlef, you don't write a shiver, and Rabbi Yossi says you write a shiver. Amalei Rav Yemel Rav Kahana, V'Amilei Rav Yemei Midifti Rav Kahana, but in the Kasvinin story, Mochri. But we who say that you do write a star mocher, and the Kasvinin Tavra, and we do write, we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, not like Rabbi Yehuda, that you do provide a receipt. Why are we not concerned about that there's going to be this knunya, this type of strategy where he's going to make the loan and then he's going to pay it back and then he's going to produce a shiver. The shiver is not going to help because the other person has the shiver is not going to help because he has something that he's claiming is a new loan. So the answer is there's an eitzah. That, and this I think Rufal asked this on Friday. Rav Ava instructed his ciphers, ki kasvisu shtar ma'ochri, when you write a shtar ma'ocher, kasvu hachi, this is the way you should write it. Shtar dinon loy bezmane kasavne, ella achronu v'kasvenu. It says in a shtar ma'ocher, you can write a shtar ma'ocher, but you have to indicate in the star that it's a shtar mocher. So if the person comes in Tishrei and produces the shtar mocher and says, you just lent it to me now, the guy who's the borrower will say, well, look what it says in that star. It says it's a shtar mocher, so you can't prove that you can't say that it was lent now. I have a tavra that says that I paid you back 2 months ago. This is the same loan because the shtar mocher says in it. That was your suggestion, Paul, right? That you should write in it that it's a shtar mocher. What do we do now that people don't actually write? They give a shtar mocher and they don't write this nusach. So what's the protection for a loiva? Basra the Amalei, Rav Safra l'Safrei. Rav Safra gave another instruction. Hani Tavri. When you write a shiver, right? So we said the problem is going to come about because when the lender claims that he lost the star, so he's going to write a receipt and give it to the borrower, and then 2 months later he'll miraculously take out his star that he had hidden, and he'll try to say that this is a new loan. So when you write the shiver, because the person claims that he lost the loan, if you know what date was set in the loan, write that date in the receipt. That means in right, this was in let's say in Iyar, right? The loan was originally made in Nisan, and it was Ma'achar to Tishrei. And then somewhere in Iyar, the Ruvain paid back the loan. So Shimon said, I don't have the loan document, I don't have the star, but I'll write you a receipt. But was scared that Shimon's going to still produce the original star. So you write in the receipt that the date that this receipt applies to, the date of the loan that this receipt applies to, it was written in that loan document that it's in Tishrei. So if then Shimon tries to produce the original loan document, Reuven can produce the receipt that says that this receipt is for the loan that was written in it for Tishrei, to the date of whichever date it was, the first day of Tishrei. And Eloi kasvustamo. And if not, if you don't remember the date, write it without any date at all. Don't write the date of the receipt on it. The choleim is the nafik lere. Whenever it will come out, it will serve to discredit the loan document. Since normally a receipt would say a date, but since Shimon used a shtar mocher and he wasn't able to produce it, so they're unusually they're going to, in an exception from the normal procedure, they're going to write a receipt without a date on it, and therefore, when that receipt is produced, it will cause the bezin to realize that this is the receipt for shtar mocher, and therefore, any shtar that comes out afterwards, this receipt will be valid for. What about now that we don't put in that nusach in the shtar that says it's the shtar mocha, and we don't write the date into the receipt, and we don't do a stam receipt. So what's going to protect the borrower in that case? Rabbanan gave a couple of takanas that you could do, of language you could put in to avoid this problem. Man de avid. Someone who does what they instructed to be protected. And someone who doesn't put this language in, that's his own fault. He should have consulted a Talmud Chacham and the lawyer and the Tayin. He should have maybe it should have been, maybe it was in Rocket Docs. What is it? The thing online that you can get the documents. You should have gotten, if you got the right, correctly written documents, you would have been saved. So now if you didn't write it, it's your own problem. Avaluhu Rava Barav Shila Lahanu Kisve Shtara Akliyasa. Rabbi Bar Shila said to these people who write shtaris, who write documents that are used for kinyan, meaning either a matana or a sale, kikazivisu shtari akniya. So when you write these shtaris, iadiu yuma de knisu. If you know the day that the actual kinyan was done, right? If they did a kinyan suda, let's say, or a kinyan chazaka on the karka, or a kinyan meshicha, if it's for, I guess it's probably karka or an evid, whatever it is. But you know what the day that the kinyan took place? Kisvu. You should write it in. V'iloi kisvu yuma de kamaisu. Write the date that the shtar is being written. Because if you write a different day, if you write a date, if you try to guess the date, or you just listen to someone, if you just come up with a different date, and then they're going to say, "Oh, but what do you mean? How could you say that the kinyan took place on that day? I know that the kaina and the makna were away in Chicago on that day." It's going to cause a reyesa in the shtar. So therefore, if you know the date that the transaction took place, write it in. And if not, write the date that the shtar was being written, because no one can prove that it was right, that this is the day that it's written. But don't do anything outside of that, because then it can make it a reyesa in the shtar. Amlu Rav l'safre, v'chein abalahu Rav Huna l'safre, kikamaisu b'shili, kisvu b'shili, v'avagav de mesirin l'chu mili b'hini. When you're standing in Shili and writing the shtar, write that the shtar is being written in Shili, and even though that the actual transaction took place in Hini, which is right near Shili, you should write that the transaction took place in Hini and the document was written in Shili. It means you should be very precise in writing the exact, even though they're very close by, don't just be saimach that I'm just going to write everything took place in Hini or everything took place in Shili. Write out all the details. Even though the other way around, always write it correctly. Amarava. Haiman de Noket Shtara bar Meya Zuzi. Ruvain borrowed money from Shimon, and he borrowed $100, 100 zuz, and he gave Shimon a star that says that Ruvain owes Shimon 100 zuz. And Ruvain said, Shimon said, Shimon the lender said, I would like to split this into two separate documents. I'm hoping I'm going to meet Ruvain. I'm going to ask him to pay back the money, and he's going to say, I can't. I only have $50. I only have 50 zuz. So if I have on the spot ready to give him a star for 50 zuz and show him that I got rid of the original star, and all I have left is these two stars of 50, and I'll give you one of the stars of 50, and I'll just be left with the other 50, and therefore you'll be able to pay me, and you won't have any excuses that we don't have it documented properly. Loy mashvinalu. You don't do it. My timer. I'll do Rabbana Milsa the Nichalei Lamalva Nichalei Laloiva. The Chachamim would only do something, they would only do this at the behest of the lender if it's good for both the lender and the borrower. But this is not good for both of them. Nichalei Lamalva, and therefore it's not good for the loiva. If you divide it into two pieces, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I'm saying it's nichel, the chachamim that they say you're not allowed to do it, that you have to keep it as 100 because it's a benefit to the malva. It's a benefit to the malva to keep it as 100 because then if the loiva pays him 50 and he gives a receipt to the loiva, which I guess we're paskening now, we seem to be paskening like Rabbi Yaisi, then the loiva is going to have to hold on to the receipt, and if he loses the receipt, then the lender is going to be able to ask him for the whole 100. So it's a benefit for the malva to leave it as it is and not divide it into two. And it's good for the loiva in the sense that if you leave it as $100 loan, as 100 zuz star, and then the loiva pays back 50, and he has edim that he paid back 50, and the malva comes and asks for his money, and the loiva says, I only owe you 50, and the malva says, no, I owe you 100. Or even if he says, I only owe you 50, I think since the star is pogum, since we know that part of the star was paid off, in order for the malva to get money from the loiva, he's going to have to make a shvua. It's going to be it's going to be incumbent on him to make a shvua, since part of this is a star, where part of it was already paid off, and the loiva can prove that part of it was paid off, he's going to have to make a shvua in order to get the other 50, which it wouldn't have been the case if it was divided into 250 zuz stars. So there's benefits to each one of them. So therefore, unless they both are maskim, we're not going to, whether the borrower requests to divide it into two or the lender requests to divide it into two, we're not going to do it unless they both are maskim, because there's an advantage of both to leave it as is. For Amar Rava says similarly. It's really the exact reverse. If Shimon has two shtaris that are for 50 each, that are both from Ruvain, that Ruvain owes him 50 zuzim, and they're both taken out at the same time, but he set it up as two separate shtaris. Make it all into one of 100. You don't do it. Leaving it as 250s is a mile for both of them, which is exact reverse of the previous miles. It's better for the malva that it's kept as two separate, because if the borrower pays back 50, he's not going to have to make a shua on the other 50 since it's two separate stars. But And it's better for the loiva that he's not going to be able to force him to pay it back. That means this is a mila. What is it? If it still has 100, right? If the how's that a mile for him? Right, because he's not gonna get a shiver. If it's two separate things, so if he'll pay back half of it, the other guy will just remain holding the other half, and he's not going to get a shiver, and he's not going to have to worry about losing it and therefore he's going to be he's going to feel pressure to pay back earlier. So it's a mile for the loiva that it should remain as two separate things, right? Okay.
It was one loan or two loans?
It was two loans of 50, and on the same day. And let's say the Malva is saying, I would like to consolidate it into one document. So he said, Chachamim don't allow it because it's a benefit for the loiva that by keeping it as two separate documents, if he pays back 50, the Malva will remain with one document, and he won't be able to do anything. There won't be any pressure on the loiva to pay it back. But if it would be a single document, and the loiva paid back 50, now the Malva could say, I don't want to give up the document, I'll give you a receipt. And then the loiva is going to always be nervous. If I lose the receipt, the Malva could collect another 100 from me, even though I already paid back 50. So the pressure will be on the loiva. So that's why he'd rather keep it the way it is, and that's why we leave it as it is. It's the same thing as before, just the mila is switched. Who gets the mila of each situation? Amar Ravashi, Haiman de Nakat Shtara Bar Meya Zuzi. If Shimon is holding on to a star that's worth 100 zuz, Amar
Isn't that what you just said?
What?
Oh, this is the reverse of that.
No, this is
got it. All right, I see. All right, got it.
Amar Ravashi, Haiman de Nakat Shtara Bar Meya Zuzi. Someone who's holding a star of 100 zuz. Amar Shavin Lechad Bar Chamshin. And he says, I want you to switch it into one of just 50. Because he was paid back. Loy mashvinale. We don't do it for him. My timer. Amin in high mifra pare. The other person paid back. V'amale havli shtari. And this guy said, he said he asked to get the star. V'amale irkas, and he said I lost it. Because of le tavra, he's gonna write him. He wrote him a receipt. He claimed he lost, right? Reuven paid back 50 of the 100. And at that time, Shimon claimed he lost the star. So he wrote a receipt to Reuven saying that he paid 50. Later, he'll produce the star of, I don't know, what is he doing? He's going to take out this one that says 50 on it, this new 50, and they'll say this is a new star, a new thing, but you still owe me the original 50. I'm not really sure how this works because he doesn't have the star anymore, the 100 zuz star. So how's he getting the money to him? I guess maybe he'll bring Adim of the original loan, and he'll use this new star to ask. So he'll bring Adim that he lent him 100 originally. And he'll use this star that says 50 on it, and he'll say, this is a new loan, so I want to get an additional 50. It's a little far-fetched. Why are we going to listen? Like we said already, the eitzes of what you could do about a tavra. Under this case, you write the nusach of the tavra. And it sounds like it's the same case like we've been talking about till now, how do you write a tavra on it sounds like the problem is the tavra, not the additional 50. Okay. Sagt the Mishnah. Shnei achen, echad ani ve'echad asher. Two brothers, one's rich and one's poor. V'niach le'navi and merchatzu beis habad. The father left over them a wash house and a olive press. Asan l'schar. If it's a commercial enterprise, it's used for he He uses it for the public use, and people pay to use it. Haschar le'emtza. So this is part of the estate, and whatever money it produces is shared by the two brothers. Awesome la'atzmai, but if it's a personal Beis Habad, it's a personal olive press or a personal bathhouse, which is something that only wealthy people use. Hari Asher Aimalani, the Asher can tell the Yani, Kach lo avodim, go get your slave, the yichotzu merchatz, and go wash in the merchatz. Kach lo zeisen, get your olives, and use in the Beis Habad. So I guess the way to modernize this case is Rockefeller dies and he leaves over a Swiss chalet in a ski chalet in Switzerland, and he has one kid who has no money and one kid who's very wealthy, and the kid who's very poor says, "I have no use of a ski chalet. It cost me $50,000 just to get there." So the other, so we say, since it's intended, the ski chalet is intended for personal use, the poor one cannot say, "I demand that it be used for commercial use." You can't switch over the use. If it's something that can be sold, it can be divided, then you divide it. But if it's something that can't be divided up and sold, you can't force the other one to sell it. Shnaim shahu bi'ir achas. Two people that were living in one city. Shem echad Yosef ben Shimon, Shem echad Yosef ben Shimon. They both had the same name of Yosef ben Shimon. Ein yechon lohitzi shtar choyev zel zeh. Neither one of them can say, "I have a shtar choyev." Yosef ben Shimon can't say, let's call him Yosef ben Shimon A and Yosef ben Shimon B. Yosef ben Shimon A can't produce a shtar that says Yosef ben Shimon owes me $100, because it's possible that he had originally that he had borrowed money from Yosef ben Shimon B, and then when he paid it back, Yosef ben Shimon B had to hand over the shtar to him as the loiva. And now he's going to turn around and use that same shtar that he was given back when he borrowed money. He's going to use it to say that he owes me money. And no one else can bring a shtar chayiv against either one of them, because whoever brings it and says Yosef ben Shimon A owes me money, he'll say, "What are you talking about? It's not me, it's Yosef ben Shimon B." Nimtzal echad ben shtaroisav shtaroi shel Yosef ben Shimon parua. If someone finds amongst his documents a receipt saying that the money owed by Yosef and Shimon is paid, shtar shnei and peruin. Both of their documents are considered to be paid up. Now it's very strange. We just said that you can't collect from Yosef and Shimon. So how did it happen that he had a document, a receipt? He never could have gotten the money from it. The Gemara is going to ask that. Ketzad Yasser, what do you take to do if you have all these problems with two people with the same names? Yishalshlu. You should go Yosef ben Shimon ben Yaakov. You say all the names. Vimhayu mishulash. If they have the same, the grandfather was also the same name. Yichtavu Simon. You should write a simon. You should write some kind of note that something. Let's say that this person is tall, this person is short. Vimhayu misumanim. If they're very similar, you can't tell the difference between them. Yichtavu Kayin. You should write it like, are they a Kayin or a Levi? They're from which Shevet they're from. So, and the Gemara is, I think, going to ask what happens if that is also the same. Haushtar the Nafik lebeidina the Rav Huna. There's a star that came to the bezin of Rav Huna. They have a kasav be'ani pliny by pliny lavisi manim imcha. It says Yaakov ben Shimon, Pliny and Pliny, whatever. It doesn't make sense what his name was. He says, "I borrowed from you money." It doesn't say the name of who he borrowed from. It just says a pronoun. I borrowed from you money. Amar Rav Huna, Limcha, when it says from you, Afil Meish Galusav, Afil Mishvar Malka, it could be anyone. So this is not going to be able to be used to collect money. We don't know who the you is. You could have, as we're going to see, maybe you could have found it on the street. It could be anyone. Limcha, this doesn't tell you anything. Amalei Rav Chizda l'Rava Poik Ayimba. Rav Chizda warned Rabbah that Rav Huna gave a teretz, but he's going to want you also to do research. So go check out what the halacha is in such a case. Rav Huna is going to ask you tonight what the halacha is. Minach. Nafik dak v'ashkach. He went and he looked and he found the Tanya. Geichiyesh alav edim ve'ein b'izman. Everyone, this is a second time we're coming back to Gittin. If everyone remembers back in Gittin, it's important to have the get on the Zman on the get, the Chum Masak, and you have to have the Zman, because it could be all kinds of problems if you don't have the Zman. So you have to have a Zman in order for the get to be kosher. So if you have a get that has Eidim and there's no Zman, Abel Shol Omer, Im Kaisev Boy, Grashtia Hayoim, kosher. If it says I was Megarish you on this day, then it's kosher. Alma Hayoim, Hahu Yuma Denafik Bey. So since, even though it doesn't say the actual date in the get, but since it says this date that the get was given over, and they do that in front of Adam, right? It has to be given over in front of Adam. So we're going to be able to ask the Adam, what day was that the get was given over? So that indication in the star, which we can interpret to mean what day it was, that's enough. So too, if it says from you, we can assume it's from the person who's holding on to it. So there's a roundabout way, just like by the Zman, even though you didn't write the actual Zman, but you said that the day that it was given over, so we can then figure it out. So too over here, whoever the person who's holding it, that's who is intended. Amle Abaya. Abaya says, V'dilma b'shol Reb Eliezer svirle. Maybe he holds like Reb Eliezer, the Amr, Eidei Mesir Karti. He's the mandam who says that the Eidei Mesir are the one who dictate it. You don't actually have to have a Zman. And that's the reason why he said it's good. The din that you need to have the Zman, and it's possible without the Zman, is only according to mandam Eidei Chasima. You have to have everything. But according to mandam Eidei Mesir, the Eidei Mesir can provide the Zman. So it's not that their testimony lets us know what's written in the Zman is accurate, and therefore we use it. But we don't even care what's written in the Zman. But over here, Leichash Nafila. Over here, you're trying to say that this is that Shimon's trying to say that this is mine. I'm producing it, and it's Ruin owes the money to me because it says Mimcha. That's not dispositive. We don't know based on the circumstances just because he's holding it that it's his. Maybe it fell down, and he got it. He said, no, that's not a concern. We can't actually determine who is that the holder is the one who the star was written for, because we're not chayshish that someone drops a document. So tomorrow, where do I see that we're not chayish from lefila? From our Mishnah, it's none. Like we said in our Mishnah, they can't produce stars against one another, and no one else can produce a star against them. But the mashmais in the Mishnah is we left out one obvious case. They can produce a star, even though there's another Yosef and Shimon. So why can't the person who they're producing the star against to try to be given money from, why can't he say, I don't owe you money? This star was written for the other Yosef and Shimon. Why don't we chayish that maybe this one dropped it and it doesn't? He's not really the lender. So why does the Mishnah say that that's okay? That we're not worried about that. We see from Mishnah Nefila is nechashinan, and that will also explain by the get that lenefila nechashinan. We're not chayish lenefila. I'm sorry. Yeah. Zok the Gemara. No. Babaya lenefila chad lechashinan lenefila ram chashinan. You can't compare them. When you talk about two Yosef and Shimon's, so you're going to say that this is not yours. It really was the other Yosef and Shimon, and he dropped it, and you found it. What's the chance of that? It's 2 people out of 1,000 people in the town. But when you have a star that says that you owe money, then we have to be concerned that maybe it fell and it was really someone else. Okay. We'll stop over here and we'll continue Bez Hashem tomorrow. I remember last week we